Good evening, horror stories. I want to share with this community a macabre story that happened to me a few years ago. I am a truck driver in the northern United States, and what happened to me that night has scarred me to this day. I have decided to tell it so that my colleagues know that we are not alone and to be careful. My name is Christopher, and I have been transporting fish to different parts of the country for over 20 years. Throughout my career, I have had countless experiences, both good and bad. But this story is by far the most disturbing. As you may know, our job has no fixed hours. I work both day and night. And for me, that has always been normal. In fact, I liked driving at night because there is no traffic, until that day when I experienced a paranormal event that I had never experienced before, and it changed everything. That night I was driving on Route 94, a regular road I took to make deliveries to one of my most important clients. Everything was going normally, and I was a few hours away from my destination. However, the snow seemed to have caused a very serious accident. We were made to wait on the road or detour to avoid a line of traffic that was not moving. Upon inquiring with the road crew, I was informed that the road was blocked in both directions due to a head-on collision involving a truck and two cars. They still had to wait for the tow trucks to arrive to remove the truck and at least free up one direction of the road. In the distance, I could see the lights of the ambulance and the police. It was complete chaos. I didn't want to risk not arriving on time with the delivery of the merchandise, so I couldn't afford to wait for them to clear the road. I decided to turn around and go back along the same road. I knew how to take another route to detour and get back on the same road much further down the road. It had been many years since I had been through there, but I was sure it still existed. It was a dirt road, quite narrow and unpaved. I knew that when it snowed, they didn't go by with the tractor to remove the snow, since it wasn't very busy. Even so, although I would have to go slower, it would save time. I decided to take that road and went into it. The truck lurched over the potholes and the road was barely illuminated by the vehicle's lights. The whiteness of the snow was the only thing that stood out in the darkness. But the worst was about to happen. The truck's lights began to flicker like never before. In a few seconds of absolute darkness, I began to touch the light lever to see what was going up and down without stopping. Until, finally, in less than 5 seconds, they came back on, and, at that moment, my eyes could not believe what they were seeing. An extremely tall, dark figure was running in the same direction as the truck, just a few feet in front of me. As he ran, he turned and watched me. The darkness around me was immense. I looked desperately to the sides. I don't know if in search of help or in desperation, but when I looked back ahead, the figure was gone. The snow began to fall heavily, and I could barely see beyond the windshield. Again, the truck's lights began to flicker, preventing me from seeing the road. I slowed down even more, as it was too dangerous. I tapped the light lever repeatedly until they finally came back on, and with great relief I noticed that the figure was not there. However, in a matter of seconds, there he was again, but this time standing in the middle of the road, watching me as if stalking me from the shadows. She was wearing a black robe that covered her feet and part of her head, and she seemed to have no face. All I could make out were his dark eyes and the holes where his nose should be. It was such a terrifying sight that I cannot describe it in words. It emanated such a dark energy that I felt my body go completely slack. In a sudden maneuver, I decided to turn the truck around. With a rather large trailer, I had no choice but to pull onto what would become the sidewalk, stepping over a wire fence to maneuver. At that point, I was praying that the truck wouldn't get stuck in the snow. Suddenly, I felt something hit the back of the truck with tremendous force, making a shuddering metallic noise. It was terrifying. I drove as fast as the snow would let me, looking in the rearview mirror over and over again, but I couldn't see anything. The banging continued to echo until I finally rejoined the road and it stopped. I thought it was all over. I drove on in the midst of overwhelming nervousness and fear until I got far enough away and slowed down and pulled over to the shoulder of a rest area to call a friend and vent. I needed to talk to someone and calm down. I couldn't keep driving like that, and I picked up my cell phone and called him. Aware that it was late at night, but hoping he would still answer. He answered immediately. I knew that if I called him at that hour, it was because something was wrong. He first tried to calm me down in every way possible, and then asked me where that had happened. I explained the detour I had taken, and the route on which everything had happened to me. Before he finished talking, my friend interrupted me and said, "No, no, Christopher. Why did you go that way?" I replied, "I just told you I had to take that shortcut because of the accident on the main road. Otherwise, I wouldn't be on time with the delivery." Angrily and firmly, he told me that I should not have taken that route because it was rumored that that road had a pact with death, and that I had endangered my life, that he did not understand how I had gotten out of there unscathed. I remained silent for a few seconds, trying to assimilate his words, while in my mind kept appearing the images of the figure in the middle of the darkness on the road, like something out of a horror movie. As he continued talking, he warned me never to take that route again. He told me about the multiple fatal accidents that had occurred in recent years, involving cases of lone drivers on the road. The police had found no explanation for these events, which ranged from bizarre accidents to the disappearance of people whose vehicles turned up abandoned on that same road without a trace of them. In short, he described to me hundreds of unsolved cases that had occurred on that stretch of road at night. I listened intently, as terror washed over me with every word he said. After hanging up, I continued on my route until I found a gas station where I could relax in a well-lit area. When I got out of the truck and dared to check the back of the trailer, I felt my breath catch as I saw it completely dented. However, that was far from the worst of it. When I opened the doors, I saw that the boxes containing the fish were all open, some fish even scattered on the floor of the truck. They were full of maggots and the boxes were completely broken. The smell was nauseating and the walls were scratched all over, as if someone had scratched them with a metal rake. When I left my initial destination, the merchandise was in perfect condition, sealed in coolers at the right temperature to prevent any deterioration. The same was true of the walls of the truck. They were in perfect condition. The answer, I suppose, is obvious. I had wandered into the wrong place and was paying the consequences. However, that was the least of my worries in the days that followed. I began to experience weakness in my body, difficulty walking normally, general aches and pains, and nausea at night that prevented me from falling asleep. But above all, I felt an intense pain in my head that made me so dizzy that I could not even lie down. I went to the doctor and he prescribed medication and absolute rest, but my symptoms persisted and became more and more intense. After a few days, I went back for a change in my treatment, thinking that maybe I needed something stronger. The doctor decided to run tests to rule out any disease or virus, but the results showed nothing abnormal. The doctor did not understand what was causing me so much discomfort for so many days in spite of the medical treatment that was indicated. My colleague, the one I called that night to tell him everything by cell phone, became concerned and came to visit me one afternoon. He recommended that I get holy water, and the next day we went to church together to have the priest bless me. It was a surreal experience. I could not believe everything I was going through. That same day, I began to feel better, and my recovery was progressive. There was no medication that in days could have accomplished what I experienced. I finally understood that something had been stalking me, and that it was not going to just let me go. I shudder to remember it, and to know that evil exists from beyond and can even cause us to die. I want to warn you, especially my colleagues, never to take shortcuts on desolate roads at night, because from some dark corner, something could be waiting for us. If you have enjoyed this story, we invite you to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any others. Until next time.